Let's talk about power. I mean, it's everywhere, right? It shapes our world, our history, how we deal with each other. But how do we actually manage it? What are the basic playbooks humans use to get power? And what have we built to keep it in check? We're going to kick things off with a pretty wild thought experiment.
Okay, just imagine for a second. You wake up tomorrow and suddenly everyone on Earth has incredible comic book level super strength. Sounds pretty cool, right? No more struggling with groceries. But think about it for a second. A friendly handshake, it could shatter someone's hand. Trying to open a pickle jar could literally rip the door off your fridge.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a complete nightmare. This little thought experiment shows us something fundamental. Raw, unchecked power isn't a gift. It's a huge problem. It tells us that the real challenge isn't just getting power, it's figuring out how to control it. And to really get a handle on how we do that in society, we actually have to start with the basic physics of force itself.
So let's bring this back down to earth. We might not have super strength, but don't kid yourself. The human body is already a surprisingly powerful machine. We can generate a lot of force.
Get this, an average boxer can throw a punch with about 5,000 newtons of force. To put that in perspective, that's about half the kinetic energy of a bullet from a .223 rifle right at the muzzle. We're talking about a serious amount of power here. But, and this is a big but, wielding that kind of force always comes at a price, and that's thanks to a basic law of the universe.
You've probably heard this before, but think about what it really means for power. When that boxer throws that 5,000 Newton punch, the exact same amount of force is slamming right back into their own hand. It has to absorb all that recoil. Without intense training and, big padded gloves to spread out that energy, they just break their own bones. It's a perfect illustration that using force is always costly, and it's always risky, even for the person who's dishing it out.
And this is a fantastic way to think about how we make force more effective. An elbow strike, for example, spreads that force out over a wide area. But take something like the tip of a pen. It concentrates all that same force onto one tiny little point, which skyrockets the pressure. This is a perfect metaphor for how power works in our social world. It's not just about how much raw force you have, it's about how you focus it.
And that idea of how you apply force is our bridge, taking us from the world of physics right into the world of psychology. Because when it comes to climbing the social ladder, it turns out humans have evolved two totally different ways to get to the top.
Yep, researchers have boiled it down to these two fundamental strategies for getting influence and status. And believe me, they are not the same thing at all. Understanding the difference between dominance and prestige explains so much about our social lives. From the kind of boss you actually admire versus the one you're just scared of, all the way up to global politics.
So, let's start with the one we all know. The old school method you see all over the animal kingdom. And unfortunately, all over human history too. This is the path of brute force and coercion.
Now here's the absolute key. Dominance is taken. It is never given. It's all about making other people do what you want because they're afraid of what'll happen if they don't. The classic my way or the highway type. Their entire influence depends on their ability to make your life miserable.
And the people who lean into this strategy, well, they tend to share a pretty specific psychological profile. We're talking aggression, a sense of arrogant pride. That's hubris, and they're almost always laser-focused on what's good for them, not what's good for the group. But this strategy, it has a huge, fatal flaw.
Because it's built entirely on fear, a dominant space system is incredibly unstable. It's like a house of cards. The people underneath are just waiting, always looking for a chance to push back or just get away. In fact, one study followed groups over time and found that the influence of these dominant types just plummeted after only a few months. It's a really fragile way to stay in charge.
Now for the second path. And this one is a much more uniquely human way of doing things. This isn't about taking power at all, it's about earning it.
This is a total 180 from the dominance playbook. With prestige, your rank is freely given to you by other people. They choose to follow you. Think of a great mentor, or a brilliant artist, or a skilled leader, because they admire what you can do and they actually want to learn from you. Your influence comes from the benefits you provide, not the cost you can inflict.
And the traits that go along with prestige, you guessed it, they're basically the mirror opposite of dominance. These are the people we value for what they know, for their genuine humility, their willingness to share their knowledge, and their habit of doing things for the good of the group.
And here's the kicker. Unlike dominance, prestige is built to last. That same study that saw the dominant leaders crash and burn, it found that the influence of prestigious individuals actually grew stronger over time. See, respect builds on itself, creating this really durable, resilient kind of social power. So let's just put them side by side. Your rank either comes from coercion or from your skills. The emotion you create in your followers is either fear or genuine admiration. Your key traits are either aggression or generosity. And the result? One system is volatile and bound to collapse, and the other is durable and strong. I mean, they're two completely different worlds, built from two totally different approaches to power.
So, if dominance is so shaky and, let's be honest, pretty awful to live under, what do we do about it? Well, throughout our history, humans have developed this incredibly powerful, collective way to fight back. And this response is actually the foundation for so much of our modern world.
Researchers call this a leveling coalition. It's a fancy term for when the rest of the group finally says, okay, enough is enough, and they work together to bring a tyrant down. It's like the group's immune system kicking in to fight off unchecked dominance. But what if this whole idea of leveling wasn't some noble act of justice? What if it was something darker? One philosopher had a radically different take on it.
That's right, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He looked at this whole leveling instinct, this banding together of the less powerful, and he didn't see courage, he saw resentment. He actually argued that our modern systems of equality, things like human rights, weren't a moral victory at all. He called it a slave morality, basically a system designed by the weak to hold back the strong.
So, in his view, you had two kinds of morality. Master morality was for the exceptional few, the powerful people who decide what's good and bad on their own terms. But then, he said, you have slave morality. This, he claimed, bubbles up from the powerless, who, out of pure resentment, start praising things like pity and kindness and condemn the strength of the masters. For Nietzsche, our entire modern moral system was just a victory for the herd over the exceptional individual.
But here is where this gets really interesting, because this whole critique sets up this beautiful, profound paradox right at the heart of our world. It's an irony that I don't think Nietzsche himself ever fully saw.
Just think about it for a minute. Nietzsche himself, a guy who philosophized with a hammer and attacked the very core of Western values, he was able to do all of that without being thrown in jail or, executed. Why? Because he was protected by the very slave morality he hated so much. The system of human rights, built on this idea that everyone is equal, is the very thing that creates a safe space for exceptional, rule-breaking individuals to even exist and share their radical ideas.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Maybe the real genius of a system that says everyone should be treated the same isn't to crush the exceptional, but to provide the ultimate protection for those who dare to be different. Maybe leveling the playing field is the only way to make sure they have the freedom to emerge in the first place.